Welcome to Mac Stories Unwind, the show that's all about the picks. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Good. We're heading into the weekend, which, you know what? I really enjoy my weekends, but I don't enjoy my Fridays as much because Fridays are really busy. But here we are, we're recording Mac Stories Unwind, and we've got picks. We've got picks for everybody. I think we've got a couple of really good ones this week. All right. I'm going to kick it off, Federico, and I'm going to kick it off with a movie. It's not a brand new movie, but it's a relatively new movie to streaming, and that is Belfast. Belfast is a Kevin Branagh directed film that takes place in Belfast, Ireland in 1969. And it's interesting because this is, 1969 was when the Troubles started, as they're called, which is, the disputes between the, this is where I dive into another country's politics and I get very uncomfortable because I know I'm going to offend somebody. But it was, it's often portrayed as a Protestant versus Catholic dispute. It has a lot to do with nationalism and the fact that Northern Ireland is governed by the United Kingdom and the rest of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland is its own sovereign nation. But there were 30 years of strife between the people of Northern Ireland and the people of the Republic of Ireland. And there was a lot of violence, particularly in Belfast. And this story is not really about the politics of the Troubles. It's really about the human impact of war on families and neighbors. And I really like this movie because it's about, it opens with a neighborhood of kids running up and down the street, families doing, their everyday type of things. And it's very clear early on that this is, the kind of neighborhood where all the parents on the street are looking after each other's kids. Kids can kind of run off and do their own thing, very carefree, idyllic life where they don't have any concerns until the Troubles start. And there's rioting in the streets, there's looting, and pretty quickly get into a situation where this idyllic neighborhood has a big blockade at the end of the block, which is trying to keep out the rioters. And you have neighbors turning against neighbors who are on one side of the politics of the situation or the other. And it's all told from the perspective of a young boy who's 9 years old named Buddy. And Buddy lives with his parents. They happen to be Protestant, which I think is an interesting choice in the sense that I think a lot of these types of movies that have some connection to the Troubles in Ireland often are told from a Catholic perspective, but this is a Protestant family that doesn't want to get involved in the politics one side or the other. They don't want to rat out their neighbors. They just want to have their life that they had before everything got torn apart. And so it's the story of this small family, the husband who has financial troubles and is working off as a laborer in England and gone for long stretches. The mother who's trying to take care of her young son and keep him out of trouble and out of harm's way, and all the things that happen in between. And I liked it, as I said, because it really does give you a sense. It's definitely one of those very bittersweet stories because it's about a family that's being torn apart by the circumstances that they're thrown into through no fault of their own. And they have to decide whether they're going to stay in Belfast or they're going to leave and try to find a better life somewhere else. And it's the kind of story that I think is universal in the sense that it would be the sort of issues and drama surrounding a family in any, war-torn country, which is relevant to today as much as it was in 1969 when the story was set. And what I found out after this movie, which I think is kind of interesting, is that Kenneth Branagh actually is from Northern Ireland. He was born Irish, lived in Belfast, and this is a semi-autobiographical story of his early life as a boy before he moved to England. I've seen some criticism of this, that it is very much, it's maybe too nostalgic, that it maybe doesn't focus enough on the issues surrounding the political strife in Northern Ireland. But I mean, and I get that, but I don't think it's meant to be that movie. It's really meant to be a movie on a much more atomic level, not on a political level, but on a family level, and what the impact of the Troubles were on these particular people. Now, Buddy is a young boy. He's 9 years old. And all he knows is that he has his friends. It doesn't matter whether they're Protestants or Catholics, and they're running in the streets, having fun together, going to school. And then all of a sudden now he's thrown into this world where the girl he has a crush on is Catholic and he's Protestant, so that's potentially a troublesome issue given what's going on. There are classmates of his trying to get him to join in the looting of the stores in Belfast, and his mother who's trying to keep him out of that, and then his relationship with his grandparents who are giving him advice and looking after him while his mother and father are trying to deal with just getting by, really. And it's an interesting story. It won a lot of awards. It won some Oscars, and I didn't go see it in the movie theaters because I'm not really going to the movie theaters that much yet these days. And I didn't rent it. It was one of those movies I saw. I was like, well, this is supposed to be good, but I really don't know what it's about. And that's kind of why I picked it, because it was one of those that I let slide by because I was unsure about what this black and white movie about, Irish politics was all about. But when I watched it, it's now on HBO Max. So if you have HBO Max as an option, if you subscribe to that, it's available. It's also out for rental now too. So I highly recommend it. I think it's a interesting little slice of Irish history combined with a really good story about a young family.
Very nice. I never heard of this movie before, so this is completely new to me.
It's got Judi Dench in it as the grandmother and a little boy who does a fantastic job playing Buddy, the son of the parents, who are both Irish actors, I believe. So I'll include a link to the New York Times review of this movie in the show notes, because I think it does a really good job of kind of giving an overview of and providing context for the movie.
Very cool. All right. So my next pick is a TV show that actually just wrapped up its final season, and the final episode aired a couple of weeks ago. And I'm only catching up with this show now. So the show is Better Call Saul. Okay. You probably heard of this show. It's the official prequel, sort of, to Breaking Bad. Now, John, correct me if I'm wrong. You've never seen Breaking Bad?
I've seen some of Breaking Bad, and I actually fell off.
How can you see some of Breaking Bad?
I thought it was a little too intense for me. I thought it was too dark. It was intense and dark, and I kind of bounced off it as a result. And I have not watched Better Call Saul at all.
Yeah, so Breaking Bad, it is a dark show. It's a crime drama that can get pretty violent in certain scenes, and it's not a lightweight show by any means. And Breaking Bad, for context, tells the story of this Walter White, who a high school teacher who, when he gets diagnosed with terminal cancer, decides to leave a mark, I guess, and leave some money for his family by becoming a drug kingpin, by producing crystal meth with a former student of his called Jesse Pinkman. And so Breaking Bad, through its course of 6 seasons also, maybe, follows this downward spiral of Walter White into the crime world of New Mexico. And it gets pretty dark and pretty violent. But it's an incredible TV show. It has to be one of my all-time favorite TV shows. Now, Better Call Saul, I don't know why I never watched it. So Better Call Saul, I guess it can be considered both a prequel and in some regards a sequel, because it's the kind of show that mixes and matches flashbacks and flash forwards in the same story, and also kind of a spin-off of Breaking Bad. So it's called Better Call Saul because it follows the story of Saul Goodman. So Saul Goodman is a criminal defense attorney played by the incredible Bob Odenkirk. Saul Goodman is a character in Breaking Bad. It's this criminal defense attorney who is introduced to Walter White, helps Walter White in the later seasons of Breaking Bad, basically helps him disappear. I don't want to get into the details of that, but essentially, this Saul Goodman character, very sort of a over-the-top figure. It's very eccentric, I guess, very particular defense attorney who's used to dealing with criminals and has this kind of right-hand guy called Mike Ehrmantraut, who's a former police officer. These characters exist in the Breaking Bad storyline in the Breaking Bad universe. Better Call Saul tells the story of Saul Goodman and how Saul Goodman became Saul Goodman. See, Saul Goodman is not his real name. Saul Goodman is more of a pun. It's a wordplay on Saul Goodman because it kind of sounds like that. Saul Goodman. That's hence the name. But his real name is James McGill or Jimmy McGill. Now, Jimmy McGill, how can I put this? So we discover that that Saul Goodman, of course, fake name, his real name is Jimmy McGill. But Jimmy McGill wasn't always a straight individual, wasn't always an attorney, wasn't always on the side of the law. He has a past as a con artist, basically, as a kind of guy who pulls all these kinds of cons and frauds on other people out of his hometown of Cicero in Illinois, I believe, John.
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah, Cicero, Illinois. Jimmy McGill is from Cicero, Illinois. And this is what I didn't know about Better Call Saul and why this show has totally captured Sylvia and me, and we've been binging this show over the past couple of weeks. We are already up to season 3, so no spoilers. We're basically halfway through. I thought this was gonna be all about Saul Goodman as the Saul Goodman we know, and I had no idea about this Jimmy McGill type of real life identity. But what they showed, it's not another Breaking Bad. I mean, it is a crime drama, but it's also a legal drama in that it follows all these lawyers and all these attorneys as they, build their cases and go in and out of court.
Yeah, that's one reason I've never watched it. I don't like lawyers shows.
It hits a little too close to home for you.
Yes, it does. Although maybe I'll give it a try. I don't know. Do you think I need to? If I did give it a try, do you think it stands alone without having watched all of Breaking Bad?
Okay, yes. So that's one of the things that Sylvia and I were paying attention to because we know Breaking Bad. And one of our questions was how do they explain certain references and certain things to people who haven't seen Breaking Bad? And the answer is they've done this really well. All the characters that are introduced, if you're a Breaking Bad fan, from your perspective, you're like, aha, I know this character. But what about people who don't know that character? Like, for example, a major figure, a major drug dealer who gets introduced later. They do an excellent job of reframing the character and effectively reintroducing the character for the Better Call Saul audience. Because the thing is, Better Call Saul, it's set, I believe, almost 10 years before the events of Breaking Bad. So, the characters are younger, they're different. Some events haven't happened yet. So that's why it makes sense as a standalone show as well. But the thing is, what I didn't expect is that really, at least in these first 3 seasons, this is a show about 2 brothers. Jimmy McGill, our future Saul Goodman, and his brother Chuck, Charles McGill, an older and more respected lawyer. Also an attorney, not necessarily a criminal defense attorney, but his brother Charles is in his 60s, has its own firm. This firm called Hamlin McGill. So without this other character, Howard Hamlin, and who alongside his father created this law firm. And the thing is, the show is really about the relationship between Chuck and Jimmy. Essentially, Jimmy got his lawyer. He passed the bar by basically studying on his own online and then he graduated from in law school from the University of American Samoa, which is so. His brother Chuck looks down on him. You're like, you're not a real lawyer. How come you passed the bar? Like, I sacrificed for decades to get to where I am, and now you just go around and you parade yourself around saying that you're a lawyer, but you're not a real lawyer. And from Jimmy's perspective, it's like, no, I am a real lawyer because I bootstrapped my career out of nothing. I used to work in the mailroom of your law firm. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy didn't tell anyone that he was secretly starting to become a lawyer. And he passed the bar, and now he's very proud of himself because he was able to effectively bootstrap his career, and now he gets by. When we meet Jimmy McGill in the first season of Better Call Saul, he's the kind of lawyer just getting by. He works the public system, so he's a public defense attorney who gets paid on a case-by-case basis, like, I don't know, for this case $170. So he's getting by on a day-to-day basis effectively. So, and what happens next is that he gets to meet this Mike Ehrmantraut character, who we now know from Better Call Saul is a former police officer who got involved in a major drug trafficking scheme back in the Philadelphia Police Department, and relocated to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where Better Call Saul is based, to get outside of that scene because he decides to retire. And so basically what happens in Better Call Saul, without getting into the spoilers, because I think a lot of people like me maybe initially didn't want to watch the show because they thought, it's like when you play a video game like Elden Ring, for example. After that kind of video game, you need to detox a little. You need to take a break. And Better Call Saul, when it started a couple of years after Breaking Bad, because I also started watching Breaking Bad after it already started. I didn't want to start Better Call Saul immediately after, and I was like, I need to watch something else. I don't want to watch any more criminal stuff, and that was also Sylvia's concern when we started the show a couple of weeks ago. She was like, "Are you sure I can watch this show late at night before I go to bed?" And the answer, I think, so far has been yes. There are some scenes in which, the Mexican drug cartel gets involved, and those scenes can be a little too heavy. But overall, this is mostly a legal drama, and it's all about the characters. It's about Jimmy. It's about his colleague / partner, in personal life, Kim Wexler. She's also an attorney. It's about the relationship between Jimmy and Chuck. There's no sign of Walter White so far. There is the Mexican cartel. That becomes a major plot point in the later seasons. But so far, I would say there have really been 2 really crude, violent scenes, which were, to be fair, they were pretty violent. But like in 3 seasons, that's like a couple of moments, really. Sure. So overall, and I should say, such an incredible performance by Bob Odenkirk. Like, I love this actor. I love this guy. I was in love with the character of Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, but Jimmy McGill, like the real Jimmy McGill, is even better in Better Call Saul. And I know that this show gets much, much better in the later seasons. I know that I'm in for quite a treat. At least that's according to the people I follow on Twitter and according to Steven, our friend Steven Hackett, who recommends the show highly and convinced me to watch Better Call Saul. So all I can say is that so far, 3 seasons in, this is very different from Breaking Bad. It does an excellent job extending the universe of Breaking Bad, but really it's about a different set of characters, a different ensemble of characters with a super fascinating story and a very intriguing human aspect, between these lawyers and between these different cases and between the relationship between 2 brothers. One of, they cannot stand each other, and that makes for a fascinating TV show.
Well, you may have convinced me to watch yet another show that I've let sit by the wayside after you also had convinced me to watch Mad Men, which I'm still working through because that's going to take literally forever to watch all of those episodes. But yeah, that sounds really great, Federico. I guess the big reveal here is that you're back on Netflix, aren't you?
No, I'm buying episodes of iTunes.
Of
like
course
an
you
old
are.
man.
Like an old man. I always forget that's even an option, except for when you tell me that you're doing it. So, all right, I get it. All right. Well, that's what I do with Mad Men too. I just figured that was the easiest route for that show because it's been off the air long enough that it was a relatively inexpensive way to go too.
Yeah. Oh, and I should tell you, by the way, that later Jimmy specializes, and you got to tell me if this is a real thing. He builds a practice. He builds his solo practice, and he specializes in elder law. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
Elder law. So he deals with the elderly, like wills and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dealing with their powers of attorney and health issues and that's definitely a thing.
It's a thing. Okay.
All right, Federico. Well, those are two good picks. A little something for people to check out. Turning back the clock on really both of these since they've both been out for a little while. You can find the two of us over at macstories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next Friday, Federico.
Ciao, John.